Hey y'all, you got Gord. You're hurting hippie. And yes, he's hurting today, but he's got a smile. Why? Because I like helping people. That's why. Hey, you've read the title, so pitter patter, let's get at her. This is going to be a long one. That's why I'm not going to get into all the fluffy stuff this time. I'm going to say, let's get at her, folks. I want to say I have a few followers who have rightfully so been bothered by this latest move of Jeff Sessions. I'm not saying it's justified. I'm saying I understand them being bothered. And why? Because the left-leaning media has taken this as another chance to attack Trump. They care not about you. They care only about taking any story they can find, twisting it to get you to hate Trump, because they know that this is his base is actually expanding. But I'm not going to get into politics. I want to prove this out. They are fear mongering, just like they did about the DACA, just like they fear mongered about the tax reform. It's Armageddon. Come on. If you want to talk taxes, bring out some experts and show why this tax reform won't work. Otherwise, shut your mouth. So, I'm going to teach those to shut their mouths about this, because this is a big nothing burger. Now, can you eat a nothing burger? Sure you can. You can pantomime anything you want. So yes, this could turn into something, but there's an underlying current of legislation and the direction of the administration, and I'm talking Trump, that as an undercurrent makes that little possibility minute. And I will explain every single piece of this. But let's start with, what did he really do? Because I saw from New York Times, I saw from Huffington Post, and I saw on MSNBC them saying Jeff Sessions starting new crackdown on marijuana states. And they are not even differentiating medical and adult use, or recreational. Now people are calling it adult use, but recreational is recreational. Anyways, I keep losing track. That's why I've got my CBD with me. Peace. And this is a new, it didn't melt there. This is a new from Yokan. Stay tuned. That was Squirrel. Okay, so what is the Cole Memo? What did Jeff Sessions really do? Did he announce a crackdown? Absolutely not. In fact, when he was asked about it, he said, all I've done is put the ability to do something, if wanted, in the hands of the U.S. Attorney Generals. USAG is a state attorney general for the feds. There's a few per state, or one per state. That the actual composition of AGs, the attorney general handles a circuit. So anyways, I don't know that part that well, but what did Jeff Sessions really do? He rescinded the Cole Memo. The Cole Memo is a instructional memo on how the federal government, U.S. attorney generals, were to navigate the waters if they wanted to perform or do a crackdown on medical marijuana. So it was how to navigate the act that goes behind the protection of those states. So that means we have to back up a bit. The Cole Memo covers an act, the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment. That Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment is an act that gives some legal protection to each state from federal prosecution over breaking federal law but making it okay state-wise. The Cole Memo, I'm going to read something from this leafly story that I will put below. The same disparity between state and federal law that existed before the Cole Memo was rescinded still exists, and the feds have the same authority to crack down on cannabis now that they did before he rescinded this. All the Cole Memo did was give guidance on ways to avoid that crackdown. And yes, Jeff Sessions may go further and repeal the Rohrabacher Blumenauer Act. That still, even if it went that far, does not authorize or unauthorize U.S. Attorney Generals from starting a crackdown on marijuana. It just changes the landscape, changes that there's no longer protection. People can't stand in front of a judge and say, hey, because of this act, I felt safe in doing what I'm doing. Now, you can only say because of the local state law, I felt safe in doing what I was doing. And yes, bottom line, if a U.S. Attorney General wanted to crack down in his area on any cannabis state law that exists, he could. Think about that. To crack down would mean hundreds, if not thousands, of arrests, many court cases, quite a few attorneys, quite a few police. Did Jeff Sessions authorize new budgetary restraints for his USAGs? No. They still have to perform within their own budget, within their current time frame. And they have already, think about being a USAG, you have already a huge plate in front of you of what you're doing and where you're going. So keep that in mind. Let's keep it in reality, not in fear. Also in this article, Leafly says, if you're a business owner or a member of the industry, what should you do and what should you be concerned about? Well, let's talk about that. Lawyer Hillary Bricken of Harris Bricken, one of the nation's foremost experts on cannabis law, says, well, number one, you shouldn't panic. Number two, it's business as usual. Nothing's happened. I inserted nothing's happened. You stick to state law compliance. You have a good relationship with your regulators and you pay your taxes. At the same time, you should not ignore this. You need to get to know the USAG in your jurisdiction, which you should have done anyway if you're in this industry. And I don't mean a meet and greet with tea and sandwiches. You need to find out what their prosecutorial record is and what they care about. Some of them made their names on certain sectors of law enforcement, and you need to know if they're super drug focused or not. And I'll insert also, once you find out, even if they are drug focused, get them to know that there's a difference between meth and cannabis. Anyways, I just added that. So we're going to keep going through this. I have just a bit more to read, but this lawyer, she does go on to say, from an investment standpoint, I don't advise people whether to invest or not to invest. There is less protection for the industry, but there is zero indication of any move towards any prosecutorial moves. But a good question that I think most of you might ask is, what does this mean for people who want to smoke and possess cannabis? You know, technically, legally, if they're in possession of it or consuming it, they too are involved in a federal crime. You've all known that forever. This hasn't changed. However, based on the recent past, it is highly unlikely that certain USAGs would ever prioritize the prosecution of state legal consumers. So while prosecution is legally possible because of federal current laws, still not very likely. This is basically, it is what the Trump government has been doing in every sector of business. They have been removing regulations that they feel don't make sense. Then they let the business be the business. So if anything, I, I had somebody send me an article from the New York Times saying that Jeff Sessions is going to go after medical states. And but yet it was in it, it even said in it, this is an opinion thing. Why? Because he's given zero indication. They're only saying, even though he hasn't said it, he means this. Our news people have to stop doing that. Just give us the facts. Let us decide. Now, I want to tell you what I mean by the undercurrent, the current political undercurrent that also backs the thought that nothing is going to happen. Currently, the Trump government just passed a tax reform bill that is going to increase spending over a decade by $1 trillion. They still need to, this year, get, if they want to stand at all well in the 2018 election, which I think they will, they need to get busy on infrastructure and immigration. Infrastructure is another $1 trillion job, and they don't have the money in the budget. So this means that they're going to be doing some, it's already been announced, where they're cutting funding to the UN and to some of the states of state-sponsored terrorism, and cutting all that funding down. They're raising $500 million there, maybe even a couple of billion, I don't know. But there is work towards finding that money so that the government doesn't grow too huge and taxes don't go up. They just put taxes down. They're not going to put them back up, which is affecting the economy well. So, to do a crackdown anywhere, California, Colorado, Washington State, doesn't matter. It would be hugely expensive, and the people would rise up against it, and I'm sure that the courts would quell any move. This is just a simplification of the rules that they're dealing with, so that when they have to deal with it or build new legislation to finally defederalize this rule over cannabis, they're clearing the plate. Do I know they're clearing the plate? No, that is my opinion. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. That may happen a couple of times now that I'm talking to you, and we're near the end of this. So bottom line, I'm saying politically, it would be inexpedient for any U.S. Attorney General in a state that already has it legalized to try to crack down and try to arrest people on a federal basis. It's going, even if a hint of that would hurt business and hurt the people. It's just putting the ability back in those USAGs, because these kind of things are just, the liberals tend to regulate. That's why there's memos and all that kind of thing. They're just cleaning up. This is a cleanup. I hope all of you will relax. Just imagine, just try to think about it from a perspective of Colorado. The U.S. Attorney General said for Colorado, or that area, or whatever, however that works, has said he has absolutely zero intent to do anything about this Cole Memo removal. Nothing. And no Attorney General is going to blow their budget trying to do something when everywhere else they're trying to expand. It just doesn't make sense. I'm going to end this with, first, drink a coffee, a little CBD on my flick, my new Yokan flick, and yes, there's a review coming. Peace. But for some reason, right now, it just doesn't seem to want to get any of that stuff that's in there. So Anyways, my friends, what do I think is going to happen? Well, you got to remember, another undercurrent is Canadian legalization. By this time next year, Canada will be legal both for adult use and for medical use. We've been legal for medical use since the 80s. Australia is moving to full legalization and digging in to the industry like Canada has to start supplying the world. The US, I am positive, we haven't seen indication, but Republicans love an industry. They love the free market, and this is not a free market. So if anything, they're working on a very much longer term plan to be able to become a leader in this new industry. That makes more logical sense to me than a possible crackdown on something that I just can't see how crackdown will work in places where it's already been legal. Excuse me, for that long. I do not see it happening. So my friends, I would hope that you will all relax and that we will all continue to talk this out both in the comments and in future ponderings. And I promise not to make my ponderings so long anymore. This was just an important one because it is a shame that the left-leaning media is out there scaring you all to death that medical and adult use would go away anywhere. There is zero indication that this is going to happen anywhere. The removal of that memo does not even infer that. It infers many things, and Jeff Sessions said it really just unties the hands of the USAGs. That's all it's doing. Peace and cheers, friends. Love and harmony. Have a happy Saturday.